4.1 is evaluating nth roots and using rational expressions. We're going to do the first 3 sections of this lesson today, and then tomorrow we're going to go into a little bit more complex things where we have to solve equations and rearrange some stuff. So we're going to do the first 3 examples today, and tomorrow we'll do the last example, or the last 2. Okay. So when you're evaluating nth roots, meaning a root that is not a square root necessarily, like I can do the 3rd root of something, I can do the 5th root of something, I can do the 12th root of something. When I am doing that, I have rules I need to follow. If n, which when I'm taking that, that means the power is n, okay? The square root, the cube root, the 4th root, the 5th root, whatever it is. If n is an even integer, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, any of those numbers, okay? If n is an even integer and a, what's on the inside, is less than 0, there are no real solutions because I would have a negative inside a radical. Can I have a negative answer when I have an even power inside of a radical? When I'm taking an even root, I cannot have a negative inside of my radical, okay? If a equals 0, there's one solution because any root of 0 is 0. Okay? If I take the 12th root of 0, I get 0. If I take the square root of 0, I get 0. Doesn't matter what it is. If a is greater than 0, I get 2 real solutions. So if I'm taking the cube root of 8, I have plus or minus 2 as my answer. Okay? So if the integer is even on for the root that you're taking, if a is less than 0, there's no real solutions. If a is equal to 0, there's one real solution. And if a is greater than 0, there are 2 real solutions. Okay? If the root I am taking is an odd number, 3, 9, 15, 7, okay? If the power I'm taking is an odd integer, if a is less than 0, there's one real solution, which means I can have a negative inside of a radical if the radical is an odd number. I cannot have a negative inside the radical if the number is even. But if the number is odd that I'm taking the root of, I can have a negative inside the radical and I get one real solution. If a equals 0, and my power is odd that I'm taking the radical of, there is one real solution. If a is greater than 0, there is one real solution when the integer is odd, when the power I'm taking is odd. Okay? So anytime you have an odd power, you get one real solution, no matter if it's a negative number inside, a 0, or a positive number inside. Okay? So let's say that you have questions like this, because they're going to set them up in your book like this. Find the indicated nth root. How would I set this up when it says n equals 3, a equals negative 216?
Isn't that just negative 216 cubed?
No, not cubed. I'm taking the root of something.
Oh, okay. So you would write the negative 216 or
Where at?
inside the radical.
Inside the radical, and then where does the 3 go?
Outside of both of them.
Right there. Now, let's talk about how you do this. There's 2 ways we've got to learn to do this. Because if it doesn't say approximate, then I have to do it by factor tree. If it doesn't have a perfect cube. Does 216 have a perfect cube, Cole?
I don't think so.
Yes.
Well, check it out. Do you know how to check it out in your calculator? You press 3, and then you press second, and where the caret button is, no caret.
There's a. Here.
There you go. Now put negative 216 in there. And what do you get?
Negative 6.
-6. So my solution on this one is -6, okay? Remember, you can always create a factor tree as well and see how many times does 6 go into 216, Cole? 36?
Yeah.
And then I would get 6 and 6. So look, there are 3 of these, which means I take one of them out. Okay? So that gives me -6. How do I set this up?
Same way.
What I don't know.
So put the 81 in
Okay, put the 81 inside, and what root am I taking? The fourth root of 81. Okay, so 81 is 9 and 9, right? 9 squared. And what's 9? 3 times 3. 3 times 3. See, I did it without a calculator. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's my answer. Or you can plug into your calculator for the second button, caret, and get 81. Now, if that had said negative 81 inside, what would you tell me is my solution? If I'm trying to take negative 81, let's think a little bit. What happens when you have a negative radical like this? When it's an even power. Look over here. What type of solutions do you have?
No one.
No what?
Real.
Real. But it doesn't say no solution. It says no real. Okay? When I am dealing with a negative radical, what do you have to take out to make it a positive radical? We've talked about this. If I had radical negative 1, what would you take out? What would that become?
Oh.
I, imaginary. So if I wanted to get rid of this, what is the fourth root of 81? It's 3, right? So my answer here, actually, this is plus or minus 3. I lied to you. You should have 2 real answers. I would get plus or minus 3i. That's not a real solution because it involves an imaginary number. So when you're doing negatives inside of an even integer, you still have 2 answers, a plus and a minus, but they are not real solutions. They are imaginary solutions. Okay? Now, there are 2 rules. If you have a to a fraction, okay, a to a fraction, a number to a fractional power, you can change it into radical form. Whatever is on the denominator becomes the outside of the radical. Whatever is in the numerator is inside with that overall number. If you have a negative fraction, you have to change, or a negative fraction as your exponent, you have to change it into 1 over that so that it becomes positive, because I can't have negative exponents. Okay? So how do I evaluate, how do I change 16 to the 3 seconds to evaluate it? How do I change that? What would that look like if I rewrote this? It would be what?
Be, I don't know how to say it.
Well, what
Well,
happened?
it would be.
The 2 goes on the outside.
Yes,
2
but
goes
when
on
you're taking the root that's a 2, what's that called?
Square root.
The square root. So I'm taking the square root of what?
So you can just leave it normal.
Yes. So I'm taking the square root of what?
16.
16 what?
To the third.
Cubed. Okay, so here's how we figure that out. Is there a square root of 16?
Yes.
What is it?
4.
Now cube it.
64.
4 cubed is 64, or 4 cubed is 64. So that's how you get your answer.
So what happened with the 2?
You took the 2, okay, this is the only one that's tricky. When you take a square root, you don't write a 2 there. That's the only one you don't write the number on the outside of, right? Because on your calculator, you just press that square root button, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's no 2 on the outside of it. On all the other ones, you have to insert that number on the outside. So the only time you're not going to have a number here is when it's squared.
What is before the 4?
What do you, right here?
Yeah, like, no, the other way. No.
Oh, this 64, that's the answer that it gives you. I was just trying errors too.
Oh.
So it gives you 64. Okay. How do I change 32 to the negative 3/5? What do I need to do first?
Put a 1.
Yes, put 1 over top of this. So 1 over 32 to the to the 3/5, right? Now how do I change that bottom portion? 1 over what?
1 over square root.
Nope.
Wait,
Fifth root.
Fifth root.
fifth,
Whatever's in the denominator. 5th root of 32.
32.
Okay, is there a 5th root of 32? See in your calculator, check to see.
Yes.
What is it?
2.
2. So now I have 2 cubed. What is 2 cubed?
8.
So my answer is 1/8. Okay. So when it says
So you
evaluate,
just go left to right.
so when it says evaluate,
That's
I
nice.
want an answer like this. When it says approximate, I want you to plug it into your calculator. Okay? So evaluate means I'm going to get a fraction, I'm going to get a answer that's easy, okay? That is possible. When it says approximate, how do I change this so that I can approximate it? Well, technically I don't have to change it, but how would I change it if I wanted to change it into a radical instead? What would you do?
I get the bit off.
How did you put this in your calculator, Drew?
I clicked 9.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, wouldn't you just do with the...
Well, yeah, but I can, if it says approximate, I don't have to change it. I can just plug it into my calculator. How do you plug 9 to the 1/5 in your calculator?
9 caret 1.
Okay, make sure you put parentheses. 9 caret parenthesis 1 divided by 5 end
There's
parenthesis.
a fraction button.
What?
There's a fraction button.
No, I don't want the fraction button on this. You're not fraction, it's divide. 9 caret parenthesis 1 divided by 5 parenthesis. Tell me what you get. And let's round to 1 decimal place.
1.6.
1.6. So when it says approximate, I'm going to get decimal answers most likely. How do you do 12 to the 3/8 on your calculator? Cole, you tell me this one. 12 to the 3/8.
Wouldn't you just do like 12
Uh-huh.
Ooh.
caret?
Yep. And then parenthesis.
3 divided by 8.
And then parenthesis, yeah, what do you get? Round it to 1 decimal.
Oh, wait. Put parentheses.
2.5.
Beautiful, 2.5. Now, this one is literally set up the way you need to plug it in your calculator. Parenthesis, and then you have to press 4, right? And then second, the caret button so that you take the 4th root of 7, okay? And then you need to probably press, let me see what it looks like on your calculator when you do that. Yeah, good. And then parenthesis, and then cube it. What do you get?
4.3.
Wait. Oh, okay, never mind.
4.3. Beautiful. So today, these are the 3 things we are working on. Okay? Let me give you some.